Harper Collins never imagined her father's voice could sound so brittle. A man who once filled rooms with booming laughter and stubborn confidence now sat across the mahogany dining table with trembling hands, his eyes hollowed by shame. "Sweetheart," Thomas Collins began, clearing his throat as though the words were shards of glass. "Our company is drowning. The publishing house, it won't survive another month." Harper tightened her grip on the teacup in her hands. She had grown up in the shadows of Collins and Company, a once-celebrated boutique publishing house that gave voices to unknown authors. Books lined their home like loyal soldiers. First editions, rejected manuscripts, fragile paperbacks annotated with her father's notes. It wasn't just a business, it was their legacy. "Tell me how bad it is," she whispered. Thomas swallowed hard. "Millions in debt. Investors have pulled out. And the only lifeline we have left is an offer." His gaze flicked to the woman seated beside him, Harper's stepmother, Evelyn, who wore pearls around her neck and a faint, victorious smile. Harper hated that smile. It always appeared when Evelyn knew something Harper didn't. "Go on," Harper said. Evelyn interjected smoothly, her voice dripping with honey that soured the air. "Nathaniel Whitmore is willing to rescue Collins and Company. He'll wipe away every debt, restore the company's future." She paused, letting the words settle like bait in water. "But there's a condition." Harper's stomach twisted. Nathaniel Whitmore. She'd seen his name flash across Forbes covers and Wall Street journals. The ruthless tech billionaire who turned his startup into a global empire. Sharp suits, sharper tongue, and a reputation for acquiring companies the way other men collected cufflinks. He was powerful, untouchable, and cold. "What condition?" Harper asked, though she already feared the answer. Evelyn's smile widened. "Marriage." The word shattered the air. Harper blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Marriage? To Nathaniel Whitmore? That's absurd." Thomas winced. "I didn't want this for you, Harper. But he insists. He wants you as his wife." A rush of heat surged through her, anger colliding with disbelief. "So on what? A bargaining chip? A payment plan in heels?" Evelyn's eyes glinted. "Don't be dramatic. You'll be secure. Loved even. Loved." Harper snapped. "Nate Whitmore doesn't believe in love. Everyone knows that. He believes in mergers and acquisitions, not." She broke off, shaking her head furiously. Her father's voice cracked. "If you don't agree, Harper, we lose everything. I lose everything. Collins and Company will die." Silence throbbed between them. The legacy of her childhood, the stories her father built, the authors she'd promised to fight for, dangling on the edge of destruction. And the lifeline was a man she didn't love, a man she barely knew. That night, Harper lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling of her apartment. She imagined Nate Whitmore's face, the sharp jawline, the piercing gray eyes she'd only ever seen in photographs. He was handsome in a dangerous way, the kind of man who commanded boardrooms without raising his voice. But handsome couldn't mask the rumors that he was ruthless, emotionally distant, incapable of affection. Yet, behind her anger, a small whisper coiled in her chest. Could she sacrifice her own freedom to save her father's dream? Could she walk into a loveless marriage for the sake of a legacy? The decision haunted her until dawn. 2 weeks later, Harper found herself standing inside the glass and steel skyscraper of Whitmore Global, New York City stretching out in shimmering towers below. Every step echoed on the marble floor, her heels clicking like a countdown to a life she didn't want. Nathaniel Whitmore was waiting. He stood behind his desk, a floor-to-ceiling window framing him like a painting. He was taller than she expected, his presence radiating authority. His suit was impeccably tailored, charcoal gray with a silver tie that glinted like armor. "Miss Collins." His voice was smooth, low, with the faintest trace of impatience. He didn't offer a handshake. "You know why you're here?" Harper straightened her shoulders. "I know you're holding my family's company hostage." One corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Hostage is an ugly word. I prefer opportunity." "Opportunity?" she echoed bitterly. He stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers with unnerving intensity. "You'll marry me. In exchange, Collins and Company survives. It's a simple contract. Nothing more, nothing less. Her pulse hammered at her ears. Why me? You could marry anyone. Someone who actually wants this. For the first time, something flickered in his gaze. Something unreadable. Because I don't want love. I want convenience. A marriage that serves its purpose without complications. You, Miss Collins, are practical. Intelligent. You understand sacrifice. The bluntness of his words stole her breath. So, you're admitting it. You don't care about me. About us. Nate's eyes hardened. Love is a liability. I don't intend to make that mistake again. Again. The word lodged itself in Harper's mind. A shadow of a story she didn't know. He slid a folder across the desk. The terms. 1 year. After that, if you want out, you'll walk away wealthy. Collins and company debt-free. Your father's legacy intact. You'll lose nothing, except perhaps the fantasy of a fairy tale romance. Harper stared at the folder. 1 year. 1 year, trapped in the world of Nathaniel Whitmore. 1 year to sacrifice her freedom, her heart, her choices. Her voice shook when she asked, "And if I refuse?" Nate's jaw tightened. Then Collins and company dies. Your father goes bankrupt. His life's work becomes ashes. The weight of the decision pressed down like a chain around her neck. She hated him for the ultimatum. She hated her stepmother for orchestrating it. And most of all, she hated herself for considering it. But when she thought of her father's tired eyes, the legacy of books that deserved to live, she knew the answer. Harper lifted her chin, fire blazing in her chest. Fine, I'll marry you. But don't expect me to play the obedient, smiling wife. This is your contract, Nathaniel, not my dream. For a brief, electric second, his gaze softened, so subtle she almost missed it. Then it vanished, replaced with cool detachment. Good, he said simply. The wedding is in 3 weeks. And just like that, Harper Collins' fate was sealed. That night, as the city glittered outside her window, Harper whispered to herself, 1 year. I can survive 1 year. But deep inside, she felt it, the unsettling truth. 1 year with Nathaniel Whitmore could change everything. Not just for her father, not just for the company, but for her heart. The first time Harper tried on the wedding dress, she felt like an imposter. Layers of ivory silk draped around her body, the delicate lace embroidered with pearls that shimmered under the boutique lights. The sales attendant clapped her hands in delight, fussing over the hem, but Harper barely recognized the woman in the mirror. A bride, except she wasn't marrying for love. She was marrying for survival. Evelyn's voice echoed in her ears, sharp, smug, and laced with triumph. You should be grateful, Harper. Most women would kill for this chance. Harper wanted to scream. Instead, she pressed her lips together and nodded at the attendant's praise. Every fitting, every adjustment of fabric felt like a chain tightening around her throat. Her father avoided her gaze during those weeks. He busied himself with paperwork, with phone calls, with anything that kept him from facing the cost of his daughter's sacrifice. Harper didn't blame him. She loved him too much to add guilt to his burden. But sometimes, in the quiet of their home, she caught him staring at her with wet eyes, whispering apologies he never said aloud. 3 weeks passed in a blur of arrangements. One she had little say in. Evelyn handled the guest list, the venue, even the flowers. Harper was reduced to a mannequin being dressed for display. And Nathaniel Whitmore? He barely called. When he did, it was only to confirm details with a precision that felt more like project management than romance. Harper, do you prefer white roses or calla lilies? He'd asked once, his voice flat over the phone. She paused, startled he even cared. Roses. Done. Click. No good night. No warmth. Just business. It infuriated her. But beneath the anger was something worse, an ache she refused to name. The wedding day arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon in Manhattan. The venue was St. Patrick's Cathedral, chosen by Nate's family for its grandeur. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, scattering jewel-colored light across the polished marble floor. The air was thick with incense, whispers, and expectation. Harper stood at the back of the cathedral, clutching her bouquet of roses so tightly the stems bit into her palms. Her father hovered beside her, pale and trembling. "You don't have to do this," he whispered hoarsely. "Yes, I do," Harper replied, forcing her voice steady. "It's already done." The doors swung open. The organ thundered to life. Every eye turned to her. Harper felt her spine straighten under the weight of their gaze. She walked slowly, each step echoing against the cathedral walls, her gown trailing like a river of silk. She saw the curious stares, the whispers behind gloved hands. Who is she? Why her? Why Harper Collins and not one of New York's heiresses? At the altar, Nathaniel Whitmore stood immovable. His charcoal suit was cut sharp enough to slice glass, his silver tie gleaming under the cathedral light. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone, as though this ceremony were nothing more than another boardroom deal. When Harper finally reached him, he extended a hand. His grip was firm, steady, no tremor, no hesitation. A hand used to control. Her heart pounded as the priest began. Words blurred around her, sacred vows, promises of love, forever and always. Lies, she thought bitterly. This marriage was built on necessity, not devotion. And then it came. The question, do you, Nathaniel James Whitmore, take Harper Grace Collins to be your lawfully wedded wife? A pause. Too long. The congregation shifted, whispers rising like a tide. Harper's chest tightened. Was he about to humiliate her? Was this some cruel twist, a test of her desperation? But then Nate's voice rang out, calm and deliberate. "I do." Relief washed over her, bitter and cold. "And do you, Harper Grace Collins, take Nathaniel James Whitmore?" Her lips parted, the weight of the moment crushing her lungs. She searched the crowd, her father's pleading eyes, Evelyn's smug grin, the hungry stares of strangers, and found no escape. "I do," she whispered. The words tasted like ash. The priest declared them husband and wife. Applause rippled through the cathedral like an obligation. Nate leaned down, brushing his lips against hers. A kiss that wasn't a kiss, barely a graze, rehearsed for cameras. Flashes exploded as photographers captured the moment. To the world, it was a fairy tale. To Harper, it was a prison. The reception glittered with champagne and chandeliers. A ballroom filled with Manhattan's elite, clinking glasses and exchanging gossip disguised as compliments. Harper floated through it like a ghost, her smile brittle, her laughter hollow. Mrs. Whitmore, a woman cooed, clasping her hand too tightly. "You're absolutely radiant. How lucky you are." Lucky. The word nearly made Harper choke. She spotted Nate across the room, surrounded by businessmen and senators, his arm casually resting on a crystal glass. He looked the part of the perfect groom, commanding, magnetic, untouchable. Yet he didn't glance her way. Not once. Her chest burned. When the first dance began, he finally approached. "Harper," he said curtly, offering his hand. She hesitated, then placed her palm against his. They moved across the polished floor, the orchestra swelling around them. "Smile," he murmured through clenched teeth. "Why?" she hissed back. "Because they're watching." Harper's lips curved into a practiced smile, though her heart screamed. She leaned closer, her voice low. "Do you ever get tired of playing a role, Nathaniel? Or is this all you are?" For the briefest second, something flickered in his eyes. Pain? Anger? She couldn't tell. Then it vanished, replaced with his mask of indifference. "Roles keep the world running, Mrs. Whitmore," he replied coldly. "And in this role, you'll learn quickly, or you'll suffer." Her breath caught. The chill of his words stung worse than the ache in her feet. The dance ended. Applause erupted. They bowed. To the crowd, they were flawless. But inside, Harper knew she had just stepped into a cage. That night, after the final guest departed, Harper stood alone in the penthouse suite of the Plaza Hotel. The city sprawled beyond the glass windows, a glittering sea of lights. She pulled the heavy gown from her shoulders, letting it crumple onto the floor like discarded armor. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror, painted lips, jeweled hair, a hollow bride. The door opened behind her. Nate entered, loosening his tie, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, They stared at each other, silence stretching thin. Harper's voice cracked first. "Do you even feel anything, Nate? Or am I just another business arrangement to you?" His jaw clenched. He stepped closer, his shadow engulfing her. For a heartbeat, she thought he might confess something, reveal the man beneath the armor. But instead, he said quietly, "Feelings complicate everything. Don't expect them from me." And with that, he walked past her, disappearing into the adjoining room. Harper sank onto the edge of the bed, her chest aching with unshed tears. The marriage had only just begun, but she already felt the sharp edges of its prison. Yet beneath her despair, another thought burned. No man is made of stone, not even Nathaniel Whitmore. And one day, I'll prove it. Harper woke the next morning to sunlight spilling across the massive suite, the satin sheets cool against her skin. For a moment, disoriented, she thought she had dreamed it all. The cathedral, the kiss that wasn't a kiss, the reception filled with strangers. Then her gaze fell on the second pillow beside her, untouched, smooth, and empty. Nathaniel hadn't slept in the same room. The ache that settled in her chest was sharp, though she refused to name it. This was exactly what she had agreed to. A contract. A performance. Nothing more. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "Your schedule will be sent daily." Confused, she frowned. Another message followed, this one with an attachment, a detailed itinerary of the week ahead. Breakfast with Nate's sister Lily. A luncheon with a charity board. A gallery opening. Dinner at a political fundraiser. Every hour mapped out, like she was a corporate employee rather than a new wife. Harper dropped the phone on the bed with a groan. Already, she felt the invisible walls closing in. When she finally stepped into the sitting room, Nate was there, dressed in another tailored suit, coffee in hand, already speaking into a Bluetooth earpiece. His gaze flicked briefly toward her before returning to the skyline. "You're awake," he said, not breaking stride in his conversation. "Good. We have brunch with Lily in 30 minutes. Don't be late." Harper bristled. "Good morning to you too, husband." He glanced at her, one brow raised, but offered no reply. The coldness in his gray eyes unsettled her, but something deeper shimmered beneath it, a crack she couldn't quite see through. She showered quickly, slipped into a cream blouse and pencil skirt, and followed him downstairs where a sleek black car waited. The driver opened the door. Harper slid in, the scent of leather and cedar filling her senses. Nate sat beside her, tapping away on his phone, silent except for the occasional clipped order into his headset. The city blurred by outside the tinted windows. Harper clenched her hands in her lap, fighting the urge to scream. Was this her life now? A shadow trailing behind a man too busy to acknowledge her existence? When they arrived at the restaurant, Harper nearly sighed with relief. Lily Whitmore was nothing like her brother. Where Nate was ice, Lily was sunshine. Barely 24, she radiated warmth, her laughter bubbling over as she hugged Harper tightly. "Finally," Lily exclaimed, "I've been waiting to meet you properly. My brother keeps everything so transactional, but I'm thrilled to have a sister-in-law." Harper blinked at the word. Sister-in-law. The reminder that this marriage was real, at least on paper, pressed down on her. They sat at a private table, Lily chatting animatedly about fashion, art, and her plans to open a gallery in Soho. Harper listened, smiling politely, until Lily leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Tell me honestly," she whispered, glancing at Nate, who was busy on a call at the bar. "Why did you marry him?" "Because I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at his phone." Heat rose in Harper's cheeks. She fumbled for words. "It's complicated." Lily studied her, eyes sharp with intuition. "Well, whatever the reason, I hope you'll survive his world. It isn't easy." Her words lingered like a prophecy. After brunch, Harper was swept into Nate's schedule. Every day became a performance. She attended charity events, posed for photographers, smiled at strangers who whispered about her behind diamond-studded hands. Reporters speculated endlessly. Was it love? A power move? A secret arrangement? Harper learned quickly to wear her mask. But at night, when she returned to the sprawling penthouse, the mask slipped. Nate buried himself in work until dawn, rarely speaking more than a few sentences to her. They shared walls, but not lives. Sometimes she'd pass his study door and hear the faint clatter of keys, the low murmur of his voice as he conducted business with London or Shanghai. She never knocked. She doubted he'd answer. Still, she couldn't help noticing small things. The untouched glass of whiskey that lingered on his desk. The way his jaw tightened whenever someone mentioned love or marriage. The faint scar near his collarbone, visible only when he loosened his tie. Shadows of a story she longed to uncover. One night, Harper finally confronted him. She found him on the balcony, city lights flickering across his sharp features. His tie hung loose, his sleeves rolled up, the first time she'd seen him less than immaculate. "Do you ever stop?" she asked softly. Nate didn't turn. "Stop what?" "Working. Pretending. Acting like this is all just numbers and deals." His silence stretched, the night air cool against her skin. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "Feelings complicate everything. I don't need them." Harper's heart twisted. "So what am I to you, Nathaniel? Another deal? A check mark on your to-do list?" This time he did turn, his gaze pinning her in place. "Your survival," he said simply. "For both of us." The honesty in his words startled her. She opened her mouth to press further, to demand the truth about what haunted him, but his phone buzzed. He answered without hesitation, turning away, shutting her out again. Harper retreated inside, fighting the sting of tears. She hated that she cared. She hated that beneath her anger was a growing pull toward the man she was supposed to despise. Weeks passed. Harper adapted, but uneasily. She learned which reporters to charm, which politicians to avoid, how to smile for the camera, even when her heart ached. She played her role, but inside, questions gnawed at her. Why had Nate chosen her? Why insist on marriage instead of a simple buyout? And why, in the rare moments when his mask slipped, did she glimpse a man carrying wounds deeper than he let on? The turning point came one evening at a gala for one of Nate's foundations. Harper had grown used to walking beside him, a silent ornament, but that night something shifted. As they entered the ballroom, a woman approached, a stunning brunette with piercing blue eyes and a smile too familiar. She placed a hand on Nate's arm, lingering too long. "Nathaniel," she purred. "It's been ages." Nate stiffened, his jaw clenched. "Cassandra." Harper's pulse quickened. She recognized the name. Cassandra Hayes, an heiress rumored to be Nate's former fiancée, the one who had left him years ago under mysterious circumstances. Cassandra's gaze flicked to Harper, her smile sharp. "So this is the wife. Interesting choice." The tension between them was palpable. Harper felt it coil in her stomach, a storm waiting to break. Nate's silence spoke louder than words. Whatever history he had with Cassandra, it was far from resolved. And in that moment, Harper realized her life in Nate's world wasn't just about surviving his coldness. It was about surviving the ghosts of his past. The next morning, Emma barely slept. Her thoughts had tangled into a restless storm. Dylan's unexpected tenderness in the garden, the way his fingers lingered against hers, and the soft glimmer in his eyes when he said he had never seen her smile like that. It wasn't part of the plan. She had sworn to herself this marriage would remain a cold contract, a means to keep her family afloat and her father's debts from drowning them all. Yet her heart had begun betraying her, whispering questions she didn't want to answer. Downstairs, the scent of roasted coffee beans drifted through the mansion. Emma padded softly into the kitchen, only to find Dylan already there, leaning against the counter in a crisp, white shirt rolled to his elbows. He looked effortlessly composed, scrolling through his phone. But when he looked up and caught her standing there, something flickered across his expression, an unreadable shadow that quickly melted into his usual calm. "You're up early," he said, setting his phone aside. "Couldn't sleep," Emma replied, reaching for a glass of water. "I have a lot on my mind." "I can imagine." He studied her for a moment, as though weighing whether to push the conversation further. "Listen, about last night." His voice trailed, heavy with unspoken words. Emma's chest tightened. She waited, unsure if he would dismiss the moment they'd shared or give it meaning. But before Dylan could continue, the kitchen door swung open and Mrs. Harrington, Dylan's mother, stepped in. "Ah, there you are," she said briskly, her eyes landing on Emma with cool precision. "Emma, we need to talk. Privately." Dylan's jaw tightened. "Mother!" "No, Dylan." Mrs. Harrington cut him off. "This is between us." Emma glanced at him, searching for a sign, but Dylan only gave a curt nod before excusing himself. The kitchen suddenly felt colder as his footsteps faded away. Mrs. Harrington wasted no time. She crossed her arms and fixed Emma with a stare sharp enough to cut glass. "You may have fooled Dylan with your charm, but I know women like you. You didn't marry my son for love. You married him for his money, for his name. And while Dylan may be too blind to see it, I am not." Emma's throat went dry. Anger flared, but she forced herself to remain composed. "With all due respect, Mrs. Harrington, you don't know anything about me." "I know enough," the older woman snapped. "My son has been burned before. A fiancé who betrayed him, friends who used him. I will not allow another mistake to sit at his side. So, let me make this clear. If you're here for the fortune, you'll regret it." Emma's heart pounded, but she stood tall. "I didn't ask for this marriage. It was arranged by our families. If you're angry, be angry at the contracts, not at me." Mrs. Harrington narrowed her eyes, as though Emma's defiance had only confirmed her suspicions. "We'll see how long you last," she said, turning sharply and leaving without another word. The silence she left behind was suffocating. Emma pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breath. For the first time since arriving in this new life, she felt truly cornered. Not only was she fighting her own conflicted heart, but now Dylan's powerful mother had set her sights on destroying her. Hours later, Emma decided she needed air. She walked through the sprawling grounds, the autumn breeze tugging at her hair. Her thoughts replayed Mrs. Harrington's words over and over until she was nearly dizzy with frustration. She didn't notice the figure trailing behind her until a voice called out, "Rough morning." She spun around to find Oliver standing at the edge of the path. His hands were stuffed casually in his pockets, his tie loosened, and a sly smile played at his lips. Emma sighed. "Not now, Oliver." "Oh, come on," he teased, falling in a step beside her. "You can't keep avoiding me forever. We're family now, after all. You're Dylan's cousin, not mine," she muttered. He chuckled. "Technicalities. Besides, I can tell you're not as happy in this marriage as you want people to believe. You don't have to hide it from me." Emma stopped walking, fixing him with a wary stare. "What are you trying to say?" Oliver leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I'm saying Dylan isn't the man you think he is. He has secrets, Emma. Dangerous ones. And when you find out, don't say I didn't warn you." Her stomach lurched. "What secrets?" But Oliver only smirked and straightened. "Patience. You'll see soon enough." Before she could press further, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma with her thoughts spinning wildly. Dylan, secretive, guarded Dylan. Could there be truth to Oliver's words? Or was this another cruel attempt to poison her against her husband? That night, Emma found herself restless again. Dylan hadn't returned home yet, though the clock ticked past midnight. She sat by the window in her silk robe, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. When the sound of the front door finally echoed through the mansion, relief mingled with suspicion. She met him in the foyer. He looked exhausted, his tie undone, his hair slightly disheveled. But what caught Emma's attention was the faint streak of lipstick on his collar. Her heart stopped. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dylan froze, his eyes flicking to her face and then to the mark she had noticed. For the first time since their marriage began, his calm composure cracked. "It's not what it looks like," he said quickly, his voice firm but edged with something desperate. Emma's chest tightened, 100 emotions surging through her all at once. Jealousy, betrayal, fear, and something else she couldn't name. The mark was proof of something, but of what? And why did it hurt so much to see? Emma's fingers clenched at her sides as she stared at Dylan, her chest rising and falling too quickly. That faint streak of lipstick burned in her vision, as if it had been branded onto her memory. Her throat felt tight, but her voice came out steady, sharper than she intended. "Then tell me, Dylan," she said, eyes locked on him. "What exactly is it?" Dylan ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few steps before turning back to face her. His jaw was tense, his gaze piercing. It was a business dinner. The wife of an investor got too close. I didn't encourage it, Emma. I swear I didn't. Emma let out a humorless laugh, though her chest ached. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? You come home past midnight with lipstick on your collar, and I'm supposed to believe it was an accident? Do you even hear yourself? He stepped forward, desperation flickering across his face. I'm telling you the truth. Nothing happened. Then why didn't you tell me where you were going? She pressed. Why do you keep everything a secret, Dylan? Do you think I'm so fragile I can't handle the truth? Or do you just not care enough to share it with me? Her voice cracked on the last word, betraying the storm inside her. She hadn't realized how much she wanted his honesty, his openness, how much she wanted to matter to him beyond the signed contract that bound them. For a long moment, Dylan didn't respond. His expression softened, the fight in his shoulders draining. Emma, he said quietly, almost pleading, I don't keep things from you because I don't care. I keep them from you because I don't know how to let anyone in anymore. Every time I've trusted someone, they've used me, betrayed me. Do you understand? Emma's breath hitched. She saw it then, the cracks in his armor, the vulnerability he kept buried. For the first time, Dylan Harrington didn't look untouchable. He looked human, hurt, afraid. Still, the lipstick mark glared at her, a taunting reminder. I want to believe you, she whispered. But how can I, when there's always something, some shadow hanging between us? Dylan reached for her hand, his touch warm and firm. Then let me prove it. Let me show you that you can trust me. His eyes searched hers, and for a heartbeat, she almost surrendered to the sincerity there. But before she could answer, a phone buzzed on the table. Dylan glanced at it, and his expression darkened instantly. He snatched it up and muttered, I have to take this. Without waiting for her response, he stepped into his study and closed the door. Emma stood frozen, her chest twisting. Who was calling him this late? And why did he look so grim? She wanted to follow, to press her ear to the door, but pride held her back. Instead, she turned and walked upstairs, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and longing. Hours later, she lay in bed wide awake when Dylan finally joined her. He slid under the covers silently, his back turned to her, and within minutes his breathing evened out. Emma stared at the ceiling, her heart heavy. They were lying side by side, yet the distance between them felt like an ocean. The following day brought no relief. Over breakfast, Dylan was distracted, his phone never far from his hand. Emma wanted to confront him, but the sting of last night still lingered. Instead, she excused herself and decided to clear her head in town. At the boutique downtown, while browsing through dresses, Emma heard a familiar voice. Well, if it isn't the new Mrs. Harrington. Her stomach dropped as she turned to see Oliver leaning against a rack of suits, his grin infuriatingly smug. What do you want? She asked sharply. Relax, sweetheart. I'm just shopping. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Though I have to say, you don't look very happy. Trouble in paradise already. Emma stiffened. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, don't I? Oliver tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with mischief. I heard Dylan came home late last night. Lipstick on his collar. You think people don't notice, but trust me, in this family, nothing stays hidden. Her heart skipped. How could you know about that? Oliver chuckled. I have my sources. The point is, Dylan isn't the saint you think he is. He's keeping secrets from you, dangerous ones. And when the truth comes out, you'll wish you'd listened to me. Emma's blood ran cold. What truth? But Oliver only smirked and walked away, leaving her trembling with questions. Later that evening, Emma confronted Dylan again. She found him in his office, papers scattered across his desk. His tie loosened as he rubbed his temples. Dylan, she said firmly, stepping inside. I'm tired of being kept in the dark. If there's something I need to know, tell me now. He looked up, his eyes weary but guarded. Emma, not now. Please. Her frustration boiled over. Not now? Do you realize what this feels like? To be married to a man who treats me like a stranger? I didn't ask for this marriage, Dylan, but I'm here. I'm trying. And all I get are secrets and half-truths. He pushed back from the desk, his chair scraping against the floor. You think this is easy for me? You think I wanted this arrangement any more than you did? Every day, I'm trying to protect you from things you don't even know exist. Emma's heart pounded. Protect me from what? Silence stretched between them. Dylan's jaw worked, as if he were wrestling with whether to speak. Finally, he exhaled sharply and ran a hand through his hair. There are people who would do anything to destroy me, he said quietly. People who would use you to get to me. That's why I don't tell you everything. Because if you knew, you'd be in danger too. Emma's breath caught. Danger? Dylan, what are you involved in? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and the color drained from his face. Without a word, he grabbed his jacket. Stay here, he said urgently. Don't open the door for anyone. And then he was gone. Emma stood rooted to the floor, her heart racing. The shadows Oliver hinted at, the lipstick mark, Dylan's secrecy, it was all converging into something bigger, something darker than she ever imagined. And for the first time, she realized that falling for Dylan Harrington might not just break her heart. It could cost her everything. The echo of the front door slamming shut lingered long after Dylan was gone, leaving the mansion cloaked in silence. Emma stood in the middle of his office, her pulse racing so loudly it drowned out every thought. She wanted to chase after him, to demand answers, but his command, stay here, don't open the door for anyone, still rang in her ears. It wasn't just the urgency in his tone, it was the fear beneath it. Fear. Dylan Harrington, the man who wore confidence like armor, had sounded afraid. Emma sank into his chair, her fingers brushing against the papers scattered across his desk. She hesitated, then began to sift through them, desperate for a clue. Most were contracts, financial reports, stock agreements. But one folder stood out, stamped with a red insignia she didn't recognize. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance shots of Dylan meeting with unfamiliar men in expensive suits, some in dimly lit restaurants, others on city rooftops. In every photo, Dylan looked serious, almost grim. Her breath caught when she saw one more image tucked at the bottom of the folder. It wasn't Dylan this time, it was her. A photo of Emma leaving the mansion 2 days ago, caught from across the street. Emma's skin prickled. Someone had been following her, watching her. She shoved the folder shut, her hands trembling. The lipstick mark, the secrecy, the late-night calls. It wasn't just about another woman. It was something darker, something dangerous, and now she was tangled in it. The shrill ring of the house phone startled her so violently she nearly dropped the folder. For a moment, she debated not answering, but the sound drilled into her nerves until she couldn't ignore it. She lifted the receiver slowly. Mrs. Harrington. A smooth voice purred on the other end. Male. Unfamiliar. How nice to finally speak with you. Emma's blood ran cold. Who is this? A soft chuckle. Someone who knows your husband very well. Someone who thought you should know the truth about him. Dylan isn't who he says he is. And soon, you'll see for yourself. Her grip tightened on the phone. If this is some kind of game... Oh, it's no game, the man interrupted, his tone sharp enough to slice through her words. Ask Dylan about the Kellington deal. Ask him what happened to the people who crossed him. Or better yet, ask why you're suddenly being followed. You're not just his wife, Emma. You're his leverage. The line went dead before she could respond. Emma's knees weakened, and she sank into the chair again, her mind spinning. Leverage. That word rang in her ears like a curse. Was that all she was to Dylan? A pawn in some dangerous game he was playing? She was still reeling when a knock at the office door jolted her upright. Her heart hammered. Dylan had told her not to open the door for anyone. Emma. It was Oliver's voice. She exhaled shakily, but suspicion tightened in her chest. She cracked the door just enough to see him leaning casually against the hallway wall, a knowing smile on his lips. You shouldn't be here, she said. Neither should you, Oliver replied smoothly, slipping past her before she could stop him. He strolled toward Dylan's desk, his gaze sweeping over the papers. Let me guess, you're starting to realize your husband isn't the man you thought he was. Emma crossed her arms. You knew, didn't you? You knew about all of this. Oliver's grin widened. Of course I did. Dylan's not just a businessman, Emma. He's playing a very dangerous game, one that puts everyone around him at risk, including you. Why are you telling me this? She asked warily. He turned to face her, his eyes glinting with something darker. Because I actually care what happens to you. Dylan doesn't deserve you, Emma. He never did. You're smart, beautiful, kind. You deserve someone who will actually put you first. Someone who won't drag you into his mess. Her stomach churned. And you think that someone is you? Oliver smirked, unbothered by her sharp tone. Why not? I could give you everything Dylan promises, without the secrets, without the danger. Think about it, Emma. When his empire crumbles, and trust me, it will, you'll go down with him. Unless you choose differently. Emma's pulse thundered. There was something sickeningly persuasive in his words, but also slimy. Oliver wasn't trying to protect her. He was trying to manipulate her. Still, his warning nod at her, feeding the storm of doubt Dylan had already planted. Get out, she said firmly, pointing to the door. I don't care what you think you know. This is my marriage, not yours. Oliver studied her for a long moment, his smile fading into something harder. Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you. He brushed past her, whispering as he leaned close. When Dylan lets you down, and he will, I'll be right here. Emma shuddered as the door clicked shut behind him. That night, Dylan didn't return. Emma sat alone in their bedroom, the silence suffocating. She replayed Oliver's words, the stranger's phone call, the folder of photos. Her heart screamed to believe Dylan, to trust the vulnerable man she glimpsed in rare, unguarded moments. But her mind reminded her of the evidence, the secrecy, the danger. Around dawn, exhaustion dragged her into a fitful sleep. She awoke hours later to the sound of the front door closing. Dylan was home. She rushed downstairs and found him in the living room, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. He looked as though he hadn't slept in days. Dylan, she said, her voice thick with everything she hadn't said all night. Where were you? He hesitated, then met her gaze. Protecting you. Her breath caught. From what? He looked at her for a long time, then finally spoke. Emma, there are things about my past I should have told you from the beginning. Things that put you in danger now. But you need to trust me when I say everything I've done has been to keep you safe. Tears stung her eyes, but she forced herself to whisper, then tell me the truth. Please, Dylan, I can't keep living like this, not knowing what's real and what's not. If you want me to trust you, stop shutting me out. Dylan closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. I will tell you, he promised softly. But once you know, there's no going back. Emma's heart pounded. She didn't know if she was ready for the truth or the danger it carried. But she knew one thing for certain. She had already fallen too deep to turn away now. And as Dylan pressed his forehead against hers, his whispered vows sent a shiver down her spine. I'll protect you, Emma, even if it kills me. The weight of Dylan's promise lingered in the air long after he pulled away, his forehead still brushing Emma's. His words, I'll protect you, even if it kills me, echoed inside her chest like a warning bell, heavy and terrifying. Emma wanted to press him, to demand every answer right then and there. But the exhaustion etched into Dylan's face made her hesitate. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, his movements slow like a man who'd been carrying battles on his shoulders alone. He looked fragile in a way she had never seen before, and it shook her more than the lipstick mark, more than Oliver's taunts, more than the ominous phone call. Sit down, she whispered softly, guiding him toward the couch. You're running yourself into the ground. Dylan didn't argue. He sank into the cushions, leaned back, and closed his eyes for a moment. Emma sat beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't know where to begin, but she knew this was her chance. Dylan, she said quietly, no more half-truths. I need to know what I'm dealing with. What you're dealing with. I'm not some fragile doll you can keep in a glass box. If I'm your wife, then let me in. Please. His eyes opened slowly, blue-gray storms swirling in them. For a moment, he only studied her, as if weighing whether she was strong enough to handle what he'd kept hidden. Finally, he exhaled and nodded. You're right. You deserve the truth. Emma's heart pounded. She braced herself as Dylan began. Before this marriage, before all of it, I made choices. Dangerous choices. When my father died, the company wasn't just collapsing financially, it was drowning in debts owed to the wrong kind of people. Investors who weren't just businessmen. Men with power, influence, and no conscience. To save Harrington Enterprises, I struck deals with them. Deals I've been trying to untangle myself from ever since. Emma swallowed hard. What kind of deals? Dylan's jaw tightened. Shady contracts. Silent partnerships. Favors owed. It started as business, but it quickly became blackmail. They wanted my name, my company's reach, to launder money, to expand their grip. I thought I could outsmart them, keep them close enough to use but far enough to escape. I was wrong. Emma's stomach twisted. And now, they're tightening the noose, Dylan said grimly. They know about you. That phone call you got yesterday wasn't a coincidence. They're testing how far they can push before I break. You're not just my wife to them. You're leverage. That's why I've been keeping things from you. To shield you from the ugliness of it all. Emma felt her throat close, the folder she'd seen flashing in her mind. The surveillance photos, especially the one of her. She hadn't told him about it, but now she understood. She was already a target. You should have told me sooner, she whispered, her voice trembling. Do you have any idea what it's like doubting you every day? Thinking you were lying to me or sneaking around with someone else, when all along her voice broke. You were trying to fight this alone. Dylan's hand reached for hers, strong and steady despite the cracks in his composure. I didn't want to drag you into it. You didn't choose this marriage, Emma. I thought the least I could do was protect you from my demons. Her chest tightened, torn between fury and tenderness. But I did choose to stay, she said fiercely. I could have walked away, Dylan, but I didn't. Doesn't that mean something to you? His eyes darkened with emotion, his grip tightening on her hand. It means everything. The silence between them thickened, charged, until Emma realized her heart was racing for reasons beyond fear. She had never been so close to him, so raw, so unguarded. In that moment, Dylan Harrington wasn't just the powerful billionaire with secrets. He was a man desperate to protect her, to hold on to something pure in the chaos of his world. But the fragile intimacy was shattered by the sudden buzz of Dylan's phone. He cursed under his breath, glanced at the screen, and stood abruptly. They won't stop, he muttered, pacing. They've already made their move. Tonight, there's a meeting. They want me there. Emma's blood chilled. Then don't go. I don't have a choice, Dylan said firmly. If I refuse, they'll come after you harder. At least if I go, I can control the damage. Emma stood, her hands balling into fists. Then I'm coming with you. Dylan's head snapped toward her. Absolutely not. Why not? She demanded. If I'm already leverage, if they already know who I am, then keeping me locked up here won't change anything. You said you wanted me to trust you, Dylan. Well, you need to trust me too. Let me see what you're up against. Let me stand beside you. For a long time, Dylan said nothing, his jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with conflict. Finally, he shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping. You're impossible. Maybe, Emma said softly, stepping closer. But I'm also your wife. Something in him broke then. He reached out, pulling her against his chest, holding her as if he couldn't bear to let go. His voice was low, rough with emotion. If anything happens to you tonight, she pressed her cheek against his chest, listening to the frantic rhythm of his heart. Then we'll face it together. Hours later, Emma found herself in the back seat of Dylan's sleek black car, her nerves coiled tight as they drove through the city. The streets grew darker, emptier, until the car pulled up outside a towering warehouse at the edge of the river. Men in sharp suits lingered at the entrance, their expressions unreadable. Dylan's hand closed over hers before they stepped out. Stay close. Don't speak unless spoken to. And whatever you do, don't show fear. Emma nodded, though her heart thudded violently against her ribs. Together, they walked into the warehouse, where a long table waited under harsh fluorescent lights. Around it sat a group of men whose faces oozed menace, their eyes sharp as knives. One man at the head of the table stood as they approached, his smile cold. Mr. Harrington and Mrs. Harrington. What a pleasant surprise. Emma froze. It was the voice from the phone. Dylan's body went rigid beside her. Let's skip the pleasantries, Mason. You wanted me here. What do you want? The man, Mason, chuckled, his gaze sliding over Emma with unsettling slowness. What I've always wanted, Dylan. Loyalty. Compliance. And now his smile widened. Now I see you've given me something far more valuable. A weakness. Dylan's arm tightened protectively around Emma's waist. Touch her, and I'll bury you, he growled. Mason's laughter echoed through the warehouse, sending chills down Emma's spine. Ah, there it is. Proof that even Dylan Harrington can bleed. This'll be fun. Emma swallowed hard, her nails digging into Dylan's palm. She didn't know how this night would end, but one thing was clear. The danger was no longer looming in the shadows. It was standing right in front of them, and survival meant standing together or losing everything. The Whitmore estate was quiet that night. Too quiet. The kind of silence that made Harper feel the walls were listening to her heartbeat, echoing every ache of betrayal that throbbed inside her chest. She stood by the massive bay window in the guest room she had retreated to, arms wrapped around herself as if to hold together the pieces of her breaking soul. Nathaniel had signed the contract. Months ago, a neat little clause buried in fine print that confirmed what her heart feared. Their marriage was never meant to last. A one-year term, an expiration date, an escape hatch. The paper had burned in her hands when she discovered it in his office earlier that day. It wasn't an accident she'd found it. She had been looking for answers. Something had felt off ever since their closeness began to bloom. Every kiss, every smile, every stolen moment had been shadowed by the nagging thought that maybe he was holding something back. And now she knew. The marriage she had started to believe in, started to treasure, was nothing more than a contract. A deal. A cruel joke. She didn't hear Nathaniel come in until his voice cut through the heavy silence. Harper. Her name sounded raw in his mouth, stripped of the cool precision he usually wrapped it in. She turned, her eyes blazing with a mixture of rage and grief. How long were you going to keep lying to me? She demanded, her voice trembling. He froze, his usually steady gaze faltering. I wasn't lying. Not lying. Harper laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the cavernous room. You plan to divorce me after a year. You put in writing, Nathaniel. What was I? A placeholder? A convenient pawn until your shareholders stopped pressuring you to marry. Nate ran a hand through his hair, his composure unraveling. It wasn't like that. Then explain it to me, she shot back. Explain how it's not betrayal when you were ready to discard me the moment the clock ran out. He took a step closer, but Harper moved back, clutching the edge of the dresser like an anchor. His presence still did dangerous things to her pulse, and she hated herself for it. When we got married, he began carefully, I didn't believe in love anymore. I thought relationships were weaknesses, vulnerabilities people used against you. My father, he stopped himself, shaking his head. I made that clause because I thought it would protect us both. Protect me. I never thought what? Harper's voice cracked, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. That I would actually fall for you? That I would trust you enough to believe this marriage was real? His chest rose and fell heavily. That I would fall for you, Harper. The words hung in the air, fragile and trembling. But instead of softening her, they only deepened her wound. Because they had come too late. Don't, she whispered, holding up her hand as though she could physically push his confession away. Don't say that now. Not when you've already proven I was nothing but an expiration date to you. Nathaniel's jaw clenched. He had faced hostile boardrooms, corporate betrayals, and billion-dollar negotiations without flinching. But standing in front of Harper, watching her look at him as though he had destroyed something sacred, he felt powerless. I can change the contract, he said quickly, desperately. I'll tear it apart. Burn it if you want. We don't need it anymore. Her laugh was hollow again. You can't erase the fact that it existed. You can't erase the fact that when you promised me forever, you didn't mean it. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Harper wiped her tears with shaking hands and lifted her chin, her voice steadier than she felt. I can't stay here, Nathaniel. Not like this. Not when everything I thought we were building was just smoke and mirrors. His eyes darkened, his body stiffening as though she had struck him. You're leaving? Yes. Her voice wavered, but the words stood firm. I have to. For my sanity. For my dignity. For my heart. For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt fear claw at him. Not the fear of losing money or power, but the fear of losing the one person who had managed to see past all of it. He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Harper, please. Don't walk away from us." "There is no us," she whispered. "At least not the way I thought there was." And then, before he could stop her, she brushed past him, her scent lingering like a ghost. He wanted to grab her, to pull her into his arms, to beg her to stay. But he didn't, because the look in her eyes had warned him that if he tried, he would only shatter her further. Downstairs, Harper packed only the essentials. She didn't need the designer dresses or the sparkling jewelry that had come with marrying into his world. She just needed her freedom. Her old, worn leather suitcase, the one she had carried since college, was enough. Lily, Nathaniel's younger sister, caught her in the hallway. "Harper," she asked softly, confusion and worry in her eyes. Harper forced a small, sad smile. "Take care of your brother, Lily." Lily's gaze darted between Harper's tear-streaked face and the suitcase in her hand. "He's not good at showing it, but he does love you." Harper's throat tightened. Sometimes love isn't enough. When the car pulled out of the Whitmore gates, Harper didn't look back. She couldn't, because if she did, she might crumble. Inside the mansion, Nathaniel stood at the same window where she had once stood, watching the taillights disappear into the night. For the first time in his life, all his money, power, and influence meant nothing. He could buy empires, but he couldn't buy her forgiveness. And as Harper drove away, clutching the steering wheel like a lifeline, she realized that leaving him wasn't just about protecting her heart. It was about reclaiming herself. Because somewhere along the way, she had lost pieces of who she was in the shadow of his world. Now, she would find them again, even if it meant walking away from the man she had started to love. But deep down, Harper knew the story between her and Nathaniel wasn't finished. Fate had brought them together once, and fate wasn't done yet. Nathaniel Whitmore was a man who had never begged for anything in his life. Deals bent to his will, people respected or feared him, and fortune always tilted in his favor. But without Harper, all of it felt like ashes in his mouth. 3 weeks. That was how long she had been gone. 3 weeks of empty halls, meals untouched, silence stretching across every room like a cruel reminder. Her laughter no longer danced through the corridors. Her scent no longer lingered on the sheets. For the first time since inheriting his empire, Nathaniel felt truly powerless. And it terrified him. He tried calling, but Harper never picked up. He tried sending flowers, letters, even having his driver wait outside her office at Collins Publishing. She refused them all. Harper had gone back to her world, her family's modest publishing house, and buried herself in work as if she could erase him completely. But Nathaniel knew he couldn't give up. Not when every beat of his heart reminded him that letting her go had been the biggest mistake of his life. One rainy afternoon, he finally did what he swore he'd never do. He showed up at her office. Harper was in a meeting when he arrived, her assistant's eyes widening in shock as Nathaniel strode through the modest lobby in a tailored navy suit that seemed far too expensive for the peeling wallpaper and squeaky floorboards. "Tell her I'll wait," he said simply, his tone leaving no room for argument. When Harper finally stepped out, her breath caught. She hadn't expected to see him there, standing tall, rain dripping from his hair, his usually immaculate composure frayed at the edges. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice cool but her pulse racing. "What are you doing here?" "I came for you," he answered, his voice low, raw. "And I'm not leaving until you hear me out." Her expression tightened. "There's nothing left to say." "There's everything left to say," he countered, stepping closer, his eyes burning into hers. "I hurt you. I betrayed your trust. But Harper, I swear to you, that clause, that contract, it doesn't matter anymore. You matter. You're the only thing that matters." Harper's throat constricted. For weeks, she had tried to forget him, to bury the ache of missing him. But standing so close to him now, she realized how much her heart still betrayed her. "Words are easy, Nathaniel," she whispered. "You've built an empire on words, on promises and deals. But what about actions? For the first time, Nathaniel smiled faintly, though it was tinged with pain. Then let me show you. The following days turned into a storm of grand gestures. Things Harper never expected from the man who once lived by logic and contracts. He publicly resigned from 2 major boards where his father had placed him, explaining in a press conference that life wasn't about empires or power, but about what and who you can't afford to lose. The story hit every news outlet, painting him as reckless to some, romantic to others. He showed up at Collins Publishing with an anonymous donation so large it saved the company from collapse, though Harper saw through the disguise immediately. When she confronted him, he only shrugged and said, "I don't need another empire, but I do need to know you're safe, that what you love is safe." And then came the most daring move of all. One evening, Harper attended a small literary gala with her staff. It was the kind of humble event that barely made the social pages, but halfway through the speeches, the lights dimmed, and suddenly Nathaniel was on stage. "Good evening," he began, his voice carrying through the quiet room. "I know I don't belong here. I'm not a writer. I'm not a dreamer. At least, I wasn't until I met Harper Collins." Gasps rippled through the audience as people turned to look at her. Harper's face flushed, her heart hammering. Nathaniel's gaze found hers across the crowd, unflinching. "I married Harper for all the wrong reasons. I thought she was a solution to a problem, but she became the answer to a question I didn't even know I was asking. What is love? What is home? Where do I belong?" His voice cracked. The answer was always her. Harper's vision blurred with tears as the room erupted into whispers. "I don't care if it ruins me," he continued, his voice fierce. "I don't care if the shareholders walk away, if the world laughs at me, if every deal I've ever made collapses. None of it matters if I can't have her by my side. Harper, I love you. I will love you tomorrow, next year, and every year after that. No contracts, no clauses, no expiration dates. Just me and you if you'll have me." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone waited, breath held, as Harper stood frozen in her seat. Every wall she had built, every wound she had carried, trembled in the face of his words. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability he had once sworn he would never show. Slowly, Harper rose to her feet. The entire room turned toward her. "You broke me once, Nathaniel," she said softly, her voice carrying across the hushed hall. "But maybe love is about giving someone the chance to put the pieces back together." His breath caught, and then, before she could think twice, Harper crossed the room, climbed onto the stage, and kissed him. The audience erupted into applause, some dabbing at their eyes, others recording the moment that would soon flood social media. But in that moment, Harper didn't hear any of it. She only felt Nathaniel's arms around her, his lips desperate and trembling against hers, as though he had finally found the only treasure worth fighting for. That night, as they left the gala hand in hand, Harper whispered the words Nathaniel had been dying to hear. "I forgive you." And for the first time, Nathaniel Whitmore felt truly free. The morning light streamed softly into Harper's apartment, painting the walls gold. For weeks now, the once lonely space had come alive again, filled with flowers Nathaniel brought by hand, books they read together, and quiet laughter that had returned like a long-lost melody. They had chosen not to rush back to the mansion. Instead, Nathaniel insisted on living in Harper's world for a while, away from the marble floors and chandeliers, away from the empire that once defined him. He wanted to start fresh, not as a billionaire CEO and his contract bride, but as a man learning to love and a woman brave enough to forgive. One Sunday morning, Harper woke to the smell of coffee. She padded barefoot into the tiny kitchen to find Nathaniel. Shirt sleeves rolled up, hair messy, frowning at a frying pan as if it were a hostile boardroom opponent. She laughed, the sound bubbling freely. "You're burning the eggs again." He glanced up, mock offended. "I'm improving. They're only half burnt this time." She slid her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "You could just let me cook." "No," he said firmly, turning to face her, eyes crinkling. "I spent years thinking I had to control everything. Now, I like the idea of messing up just to make you smile." Her heart swelled. It was in these small, ordinary moments that Harper saw the greatest change in him. Not the grand gestures, not the headlines he had made declaring his love, but the quiet effort, the willingness to be vulnerable. The man who once hid behind contracts and power now stood bare before her, choosing her every single day. Later that evening, Nathaniel surprised her with a drive. The city lights glittered like stars below as he guided her up a winding road until they reached a small hilltop overlooking the skyline, a place that felt private, as though it belonged only to them. Harper stepped out of the car, the cool air brushing her hair, and smiled. "It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as what I'm about to do," he said softly. When she turned, Nathaniel was already on one knee, a small velvet box in his hand. But there was no corporate grandeur this time, no photographers, no shareholders to impress. Just a man she had grown to love, his voice unsteady, his eyes filled with nothing but her. "Harper Collins," he began, and her breath caught. "The first time I asked you to marry me, it was a deal, a lie, a chain I thought would protect me. But today, I'm asking you as a man who finally understands what love is. I don't want a contract. I don't want a timeline. I just want you, for as long as you'll have me." Harper's eyes brimmed with tears, but they were not the tears of heartbreak this time. They were tears of joy, of release, of fate finally coming full circle. She knelt down, too, cupping his face in her hands. "You already have me, Nathaniel. You always did, even when I tried to walk away." His lips trembled into a smile. "So that's a yes." She laughed through her tears. "It's forever." When he slipped the ring on her finger, the city below erupted with fireworks. Completely coincidental, but Harper couldn't help believing the universe was celebrating with them. Nathaniel pulled her into his arms, kissing her with the kind of reverence that promised no contract could ever define them again. They weren't bound by paper or clauses anymore. They were bound by choice, by love, by fate. Months later, their wedding was small and intimate, held in the garden of Harper's childhood home, surrounded by family and close friends. No flashing cameras, no grand spectacle, just laughter, tears, and vows whispered under a canopy of twinkling lights. As they swayed to their first dance, Harper whispered against Nathaniel's chest, "It's strange. I used to think marrying you was the worst thing that ever happened to me." He chuckled softly. "And now?" She lifted her head, eyes shining. "Now I know it was fate. Fate that changed everything." And in that moment, wrapped in his arms, Harper realized that love wasn't about contracts or certainty. It was about choice. And she chose Nathaniel, today, tomorrow, and forever. The man who once thought he was incapable of love had found his home in her heart. And Harper, the woman who thought she was only a pawn in his world, had become the queen of it. Together, they walked into forever, not as strangers bound by paper, but as soulmates bound by fate.